was with the World Health Organization. I was director of the immunization program for the world, and headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. So I had the opportunity to go to Iran on the invitation of the Minister of Health. My wife had said, when you go to Iran, pick up one of the classic Persian tea sets. I remember the story because I talked with the Vice Minister of Health and said, my wife wanted me to get this so that we can have guests and be able to show Iranian culture. And he said, oh, I will help you. So we got into his car and we went down to the Silver Bazaar. And so we went to several different shops, and I saw this one. I said, this is what I think she's talking about. And he said, okay. And so he helped bargain with the shop owner to be able to get exactly this tea set that we've come back with. And so every time we use it, I remember especially being in Iran at that time.
Every time we have gatherings, I use the samovar and this special tea set. And I feel like such a close connection to Iranian Baha'is in Iran, because this is a symbol for me to contact with the Baha'is in Iran.
I think when looking at the future of the world, I have a bit of short-term pessimism because of the way mankind is going, but long-term optimism. Baha'u'llah says that peace is not only possible, but inevitable. And I have that firm conviction we will see that. Rather than going and trying to patch this dam that's beginning to collapse of the world today, Baha'is are really moving downstream, building a whole new dam based on bricks of love and unity. So I think building Baha'i communities, working closely with friends of the faith as well, of people from all parts of society to help build this new world order. That's where I think we should be constructively working. So after I became a Baha'i, I really felt that my whole vision was expanding to really be world-embracing. As the Baha'is say, the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. My name is Robert Kim Farley. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I'm a professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, School of Public Health. I was born in Troy, New York, which is upstate New York, but we only lived there 6 months, and we moved then to Panama. So we lived in Panama for 2 years. Of course, I don't remember that childhood, but I have photos and videos. I would go with my little red wagon every morning and go looking for coconuts, and I would pick them up and I would shake them. If they had water in them, I'd bring them back home. And then my mom would have me pick my favorite one for the day, and then she would wash it and put that in my crib, so I would sleep with the coconut at night. Basically, every 2 years from then on in my life, we continued to move. We had some very interesting experiences in the island of Kodiak in Alaska. I grew up there, remembering very much the salmon fishing, for example, where we would go to the beach, and Mom and Dad would get the lines ready and we'd fish, and I probably always spoiled my sense of fishing from then on, because within 5 minutes a salmon would grab the line and start heading out to the ocean, and we'd fight it back and didn't have to wait around at all. I remember also going with my parka on in the dark, tromping my way through the snow to school. So that was an interesting experience. I also remember just one anecdote of my dad. It kind of reminds me about what he was really like. I remember we were driving along and we were going over a bridge, and he saw a nail that was sticking out. And so he didn't just avoid it, he went ahead and went back, stopped the car, went back and hammered it down so that the next person coming would not experience potentially something that could make a tire flat. And my mom was very gentle and hospitable person, really enjoyed childhood. I was the only child. And so We moved to other very interesting places along the way. We were in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for 2 years when I was between 12 and 14 years of age. I remember it very fondly in the sense that my dad and I would go scuba diving, and we would go also racing these sunfish, which was a small sailing boat. We got evacuated during the Cuban Missile Crisis. When I was 14, my mom and I had just 1 hour to pack one suitcase and get on this troop ship for 5 days to travel to Norfolk, Virginia. And I'll always remember the generosity of the American people when that happened, because we had gone from a tropical climate suddenly now in late fall, and it was very cold. And all of a sudden they had these tugboats coming out to us that had all these clothes on it, coats and jackets, because we didn't have that. And this had been donated by people who had recognized our plight. So that was always something very special to me too. My father was a Protestant, a Presbyterian, and my mother was a Church of England or Episcopalian by background. But because we were at such different places all the time, we often went to multi-denominational churches. When I was 18 in high school, I looked back because we had a very good English teacher, and he had us all write essays on different, very important topics. And one of them was called Credo, or I Believe. And in fact, I can show you that basically I kept that essay, interestingly enough, all these years. And I was reading it a while back, and I realized that already I was beginning to recognize things like religion and science are compatible. And that also I asked myself, what is the true religion? And the recognition that I think my philosophy is that all religions are true. Basically, then I went to the University of California at Santa Barbara, UCSB, where I was an electronic engineering student. What happened for me was that I realized that the only reason I was Christian was because my parents were. And I said, well, I don't think accident of birth is what you should use to choose religion, because if I'd been born in India, I'd probably be a Hindu. And so I recognized that I should search and be on an expedition, if you will, on looking at religions. And so I did. I started looking at different religions. Each one of them had a kernel of truth that I believed in, yet at the same time, each one of them felt that if you believed in that religion, you were saved, others weren't, it was the best or the last. And so I was very trying to find if there was something else that might perhaps look at that same thing I felt at 18 years of age that could combine this. I had a very interesting course also on comparative religion that I took at UC Santa Barbara. It was taught by someone I think did it quite unusual way, but he talked about how religions, rather than just spending 2 weeks on Buddhism and 2 weeks on Hinduism or 2 weeks on Islam, 2 weeks on Christianity of a comparative religion, he took religious principles like creation or the golden rule of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and how that permeated all the religious thoughts. And so it really reinforced that concept of the religions coming from one source and being in cooperation rather than competition with each other. And then I just happened to stumble into a Baha'i lecture being given on campus. And for the first time I was hearing, my goodness, here's a religion that's saying all the religions are coming from the same source. And for me, it was like pieces of a puzzle beginning to fit together. That here was something that was saying, rather than religions being in competition with each other, or rather than them being separate and only one is being right, that they all are coming from one source, God, and that they all are truth. And I really enjoyed some of the principles of the faith. I think the thing that really struck me most was the idea of the religion and science should agree, that science without religion can lack a moral purpose for its use, and we end up with the arms escalations, things like this. Whereas religion without science can become mere superstition. And so I really liked that concept. When I talked with my parents about it, they were a little concerned. They felt, well, you know, you're raised Christian, and I think my grandparents also were thinking, well, you know, you're Christian. And so even though I told them, well, Baha'i faith believes in Christianity, and it believes in Islam, it believes in all these founders, they said, well, why don't you wait till you're a little bit older before you make a decision? So I remember very clearly what happened was that it was a summertime. Everybody had really gone from the school, except there was a summer program for high school students coming to have an experience at a university campus, and I was a counselor for them. This one student came to me, high school student, and he was telling me that he was having a problem with his parents in that he had discovered transcendental meditation, and he felt it was really something that spoke to him and was truth, but his parents were very much against it. And so he said, you know, what should I do? And I said, well, you know, I think ultimately you have to be responsible for your own spiritual progress. You're going to have to make that decision. And you listen to your parents, but at the same time, you will ultimately have to make that decision on your own. And so as he left, I said to myself, well, my goodness, that's what I just told him. He should make this decision on his own and follow his heart. But I wasn't. And so then I called up the Baha'i that was on campus. I want to become a Baha'i. So that's when I became a Baha'i in 1968. I took 1 year off, went around the world meeting the Baha'is, learning about the Baha'i communities in different parts of the world, primarily in Africa. And that's also really where I recognized my desire to serve humanity, and especially in the area of public health. So I came back after that 1 year and went to the University of California, Los Angeles School of Public Health, where I did my master's degree in population, family, and international health, and then went on to University of California, San Francisco Medical School, where again, I was there for 4 years, but we interrupted 1 year when again, my wife and I at that time, we got married between my first and second year of medical school. We decided we would also go around the world together before we had children to be able to meet Baha'is, learn more about the Baha'i faith and the world together. I was actually learning and excited about the exploration of what Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, the Bab, Shoghi Effendi had said. They were very much enlightening to me about what really religion was, what it really should be. I really recognized those three fundamental things in my life about the idea that we're really here on this earth. The reason we're here is to know God and to worship God, and to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization in our work. I think one thing is very interesting for me too that really impacted my life is having met my wife. And it's such an interesting story in its own right, because when I had gone around the world in 1972, 1973, to meet Baha'is and to see what the world was like. I stopped also in Korea, where I was also meeting Baha'i friends and going to Baha'i communities. And at the Baha'i Center in Korea, I met my wife for the first time. She was playing a kayagum, which is a traditional Korean instrument. And we sat up and talked a bit. She impressed me, but I gave her my number and said, if you ever come to the United States, because she was planning to come for her dietetic internship, you know, please look me up, but she never did. A couple of years later, in 1974, there was a big conference in St. Louis and some 10,000 people that were attending. And interesting enough, as I was trying to find a place to sit in the evening, there was a program, the lights were dimmed. I saw an empty place and asked, may I sit here? And it was Hanju actually there, and she said, "Oh, I remember you from Korea." And so we again struck up a conversation. And I came back for a summer to do an internship while I was in my master's program. And so we met again and got to know each other better. Then she left to San Francisco. That's actually ended up where I got accepted to medical school. And so we ended up the first at the Baha'i meeting. We first met again in San Francisco. So it just kept meeting like this. And so finally we got married then in 1976. And we, interestingly enough, changed our names because her name was Hanju Kim, and in Korea, a woman did not change her name when she marries, whereas in those times, they did in the United States. So we said, well, let's combine East and West and make our name Kim Farley. So it's a hyphenated name between the two. And so we have one child. Her name is Jean, which was my mother's name and my grandmother's name, but in Korean language it means truth. So there was something common about that name. So we have only one daughter, and she's now married and has 2 grandchildren, wonderful Baha'i family, and we get together often. And our son-in-law's parents are wonderful, and so when they got married, we each gave a talk, wrote each other a letter about how this was going to be a unity of families. One of the things that I've been very involved with is with the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education to make sure that Baha'i students in Iran get high quality education, similar to the same courses that I would teach here at UCLA. So students, today we're going to be talking about a lecture I've also given at UCLA on campus. The course that you're taking really is essentially exactly the same as what you would have if you were here in the United States at UCLA. I was an engineering student, so that's pretty far from painting. One of my best friends at the dorm was an artist. And he says, "You've got to paint." And I said, "I can't paint. I don't know how to paint." He said, "Yes, you can." And so he got me the canvases and the paints, and I started painting. So I will always be indebted to him for that. This painting is known as Owl, because you can see it has the owl eyes. But kind of interestingly enough, the pupil has exactly the same image right here as the image. So it's the idea of things going further and further into infinity with the owl. Blessed is the spot and the house and the place and the city and the heart and the mountain, and the refuge and the cave, and the valley and the land, and the sea, and the island, and the meadow, where mention of God hath been made, and his praise glorified. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. If your heart is searching, the answer will come to you like the breeze.